Say, I want to welcome you to another episode of the War Zone and tell you thank you for taking the time out to tune in. You know, without you dudes and you girls, I would not have a a show. Hold on just a second. Let me set my privacy settings. Okay. Done. Okay, so we got that set. Let me go back. Hold on a second, because we supposed to have two guests on here. Okay. Let me resend him a link. I'll do it like this here. Tonight I got Dr. Ken Davis. And tell him a little bit about yourself, Doc, while I'm getting this done for Travis.
All right. I just recently became a family to the retirement group. I just retired from the Houston Independent School District. I just spent my last 12 years there. While I was there, I was the principal at Jack Yates High School, the principal at Dowling Middle School, which is now Lawson. And I've been an assistant superintendent as well as an area superintendent in A-Leaf, where I started 31 years ago. I was a classroom teacher, an instructional specialist, an assistant principal, moved to Lamar Consolidated, promoted as principal, opened a couple of schools, opened one school in Lamar Consolidated and was assigned to Pink Elementary School was my first assignment as a principal. So in the 31 years, I've done the gamut from the classroom to the area superintendent's office. So I've had a lot of experience.
Well, that's great. For y'all that's just tuning in, this is a good friend of mine, Dr. Ken Davis. When I first met him, I didn't know if he was gonna be my friend. He was coming in as the principal of Jack Yates Senior High School, and we had just gotten, he was our new principal, and the other one was gone, and I wouldn't meet him. As much as people kept telling me to meet him, I wouldn't meet him. And then when I finally met him, I could have asked 1,000 questions, but I only asked one. Are you prepared to lose your job to help these children? And he gave me his word that he was. And at that time, I think, Doc, we were a failing school. And
yes,
by the time that you left, we were not failing anymore.
That's correct.
I tell y'all something, man. This man here is heaven sent. If you want to know about education, I think he's on Facebook. Reach out to him. If you need to understand funding models, I think you've worked under all the funding models. You know how they operate. You gave me a crash course one day on I think what was that funding model? That
I remember. It's been a little while ago.
It because right now we under a PUA system, am I right?
Yes.
And it was the other funding model that you gave us the crash course on, where it wouldn't work right at elementary and it would do a little better in middle school, but it wouldn't work at the high school level. So
right.
I asked you to come on because you most recently, before you retired, I think you were an assistant superintendent in HISD. You had area superintendent, and you had created a special program. Tell them about that program that you had created.
Well, the mentoring programs.
Yeah.
Under the Ascending to Men program, which was the boys mentoring program, and the Roses, the Resilient Outstanding Sisters Exemplifying Success. So the Roses was the girls mentoring program. So both of those programs, the former superintendent, Dr. Lathan, had promoted me from Gates, and when I was a high school principal there, to be the assistant superintendent at the time to build and develop these programs out.
You did a great job, and since I think they killed the program, closed your department. At that point, you had enough time in to retire. I tried to talk him out of retirement, man, because, I'm going to be honest with you, with the way school's struggling, if they could get this man to be their principal, and I saw him work the magic at Yates. I saw us being a failing school. I saw 35 to 40 teachers, wanting to leave every year, and I think under you, and I think the 3 to 4 years that you were there, we only lost maybe 3 teachers. So they enjoyed coming to work. They enjoyed, the challenges of getting those kids to the highest level. But HISD is not at the highest level right now. From an administrative standpoint, from an academic standpoint. You were there. You were in the trenches. What happened?
It's a perfect storm. You have a lot of challenges around student performance, first of all, and just trying to get that under with a lot of resources and getting that into perspective. The principals and the teachers in HISD are amazing people. They work very hard. They come to work every day, do their very best. And sometimes there's a need for our schools that have more challenges. And sometimes that need has to be creatively done in terms of when your leadership and how you maximize your budget to be able to get kids and teachers the resources that they need in order to be successful. Now, mind you, I said kids and teachers, because teachers they're the knockout group. They can hit it out of the park on a daily basis, but they need the resources and the materials as well as the support to do it. And they can't come to work being afraid to do their jobs. I think that, when I was at Lawson, or now Dowling, but now Lawson, and when I was at Yates, one of the things that I really worked hard on is building relationships with my team and understanding what their strengths were in order to support them in doing their job. I have never been the type of principal to browbeat people, to chastise them in terms of being publicly humiliated and criticized. It just doesn't work. And I was sharing with a couple of my friends before, so, I've never raised my voice at a teacher. I never had to. They're professionals. I'm a professional. But I have very high expectations about how we treat each other, how we treat our kids, and what we need to do in order to support them to be successful. I can tell you that doesn't happen everywhere. And even when you're looking at how, supervisors and so on want to do the right thing, my thought is everyone wants to do the right thing, but everyone doesn't know how. And sometimes that's where the challenge comes into place. And that's when sometimes things fall apart.
Yeah, and I agree with you, man. I mean, if you want the best out your people, you got to treat them with respect and kindness. But
Absolutely.
also, they already know their expectations. So, me running my own company, I always would tell my guys, don't make me do my job because I can do it pretty good. So just do what you're supposed to do. Let's do the assignments. Let's get up out of here and let's go to the next assignment. And that's what it is. From your personal standpoint, because me and you have a little bit in common, we come from, humble backgrounds. We come from a poor situation. I mean, I remember you told me about growing up in Chicago, and out of all the kids, I think, you were one of the ones that made it when some of your siblings did not make it. How do you deal with the troubled kid in the school, especially when it's data that doesn't show you what they deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah. That's an excellent question, because, for me, if people just looked at the data when, growing up in the projects, and, I was in Chicago a lot of the times, but where I grew up was in the southern parts of Illinois in the projects. And so if people just looked at the data, they would have written me off a long time ago, even before I got into the classroom, because that's where I came from. I was the youngest. I am the youngest of 7 kids, welfare, all that jazz, right? Didn't have a father, didn't grow up with a father. Any of those things could have detoured me. But I still say, and as I was sharing with a friend of mine earlier today, and always, I think, God has a special plan for me, and and I don't want to quote the Bible specifically, but when you're looking at Jeremiah 29:11, I just remember that scripture means a lot to me, because it says basically that God has a plan for me that is good and that will help me to move forward in my life if I do certain things. And so, because I have focused on education, I saw education as my only outlet. I could have done a whole lot of stuff that would have ended my life very soon, but I chose to go into education because I knew teachers that had me along the way to educate me to become a better person, right? To make me, to put me on the path to get an education so that my life would be different, because it wasn't going to be different if I had not had those people. And so when I look at the work that I've done in these past years, these past decades, and I speak to teachers and principals all the time about this, You don't write off kids just because they come in the door differently than you walked in the door, because these kids have a different background. They have so many challenges. And for me, when kids came to school, I was just thankful that they showed up because they had other options, even at the elementary level, you know? And so we kind of take for granted that kids have to come to school. The law says they have to come to school until they're 16 and so on. But we know that that's a requirement and expectation. But our kids in some of our most diverse and struggling background, economic backgrounds, they have an option. And a lot of them choose to come to school. And so we can't take that for granted. But when they come to school, we have to do something magical with them, right? There's so many deficits. There's so many things that they're lacking and missing. And others, you know, God be it, they come to school just fine, even from those backgrounds. But we still don't do enough with them to keep them moving forward. So I continue to push and press people on, you know, what are you doing to change this one kid? This one kid, what are you doing for this one? Because every single one counts. But you got to kind of be diverse and prescriptive about every single thing that you want to do for every child in your building. Of course you should. But you got to really narrow it down to what each individual student needs as much as possible.
Okay. Well, y'all see we got another guest in, and if you don't know him, he's a Sunnyside legend, graduate of Worthing High School. And when y'all out there complaining about Gary Monroe, this the man, one of the people you should get on. Because he taught me early in the game, when the cameras come on, give them what they paid for. So my good friend, Travis McGee Sr., how you doing, my brother? Hold on a second. There you go.
Hey, what's happening, man? This long overdue. Long overdue.
I've been trying to get him in here. So I got a great educator, and I got one of the top education activists in the city sitting in with us tonight. Travis, I just asked Ken Davis, you know, basically we're going to lean into that takeover situation.
Right.
But give these people a little background on you.
Well, man, I'm a graduate of FD Worthing class of 92. Been in this game a long time, man. Any issue, whether it's city, county, education, been in it a long time. I met Monroe years ago. And if you ask me, I'll tell him, don't you worry about how they tell you to deliver your mail. You just make sure it get delivered, because they go take it how they want to take it anyway. Most people would rather a well-articulated lie than a blunt truth. So the school thing, my kids was relocated like 3 times in the same corrupt school district. So I've been in this a long, and all those schools that they closed were successful schools. Grimes, recognized school. Rhodes, exemplary school. Dotson, only Montessori school, African-American Montessori school in the state of Texas. They closed all of them. So we've been in this thing for a long time. Monroe was in that boardroom 2008. We was there from 4 p.m. to almost 1 o'clock the next morning. So that's why we don't worry about what people say and how they say it, because while we out there doing something, they doing nothing. So, I mean, the shit to hit the fan on this one. So we gonna have to do something a little bit different on this one.
Well, right now there's a looming takeover.
Right.
The elephant in the room is that TEA wants to take over HISD.
Right.
Some people say it's a racist move. Some people say it's a political move.
Right.
For me, I'm just fed up, and I'm tired of what HISD has been given.
Right.
You know, after Latham left, we really ended up in trouble.
Right.
And Latham wasn't perfect, just like the folks before her wasn't perfect. But we are way to the left now. We're not making progress. We're going backwards. So I'm going to ask both of you, and I'm going to start with Dr. Davis. Should the Texas Education Agency take over the Houston Independent School District?
That's a very good question. Honestly, I don't know if they can manage it. If they do, this is a big. HISD is massive, right? And I know that, you know, even the mayor mentioned last week in his city council meeting that the takeover was imminent. And so, but he's asking people to get involved and to step up to the, and share and communicate their decision or whatever they support, whether they think the takeover should happen or shouldn't happen. I'm of this mind. What's in the best interest of children should always be in the best interest of children. Teachers, they all need the support that they need from whichever situation that may arise. I've seen that, I've been in HISD for 12 years, and I've been in Lamar Consolidated for 8, A-Leaf for 11. But I've never seen this level of politics happen in terms of supporting kids to be able to meet the performance expectations that they need to be able to graduate. And that's what we're talking about. Kids graduating, not just moving from grade level to grade level, but kids graduating from the school district. I've never seen the politics in this manner before. But what that means, though, is that doesn't keep principals from doing the right thing for their schools, because they're going to do the right thing anyway. I believe that in my heart, that they're going to push every single day to get their kids to where they need to be, regardless of what happens at the state level and whatever this takeover thing may or may not be. I believe that the teachers are going to do their jobs. I think that they're going to come to work and do the very best that they can every single day. Should it happen in terms of a takeover? I don't have the answer to that. But I think that what needs to be understood is that as long as this does not directly impact student learning, I don't think the students are going to feel it. As long as as long as the best interests of children are had in terms of education, making children get the support that they need, schools get the funding and support that they need, I'm not so sure if the schools directly may feel this impact or not.
Travis, should the Texas Education Agency take over the Houston Independent School District?
Hell no. For one reason, 90% of HISD, 90% of our tax dollars, 90% of their budget can't come directly from us. We don't get much money from the state. Matter of fact, not only that we take care of HISD, we take care of the smaller districts as well as the charter schools. You know as well as I know that recapture money is doing a whole lot of things that it shouldn't be doing with our tax dollars. We need the state to give more programs, more fundings, allow the teachers to teach. That STAR test. If they want to do something, do away with the STAR test. It's on a 5-year contract. It's $100 million per year. We could do a whole lot with $500 million. We could bring programs back. We could keep teachers. We could put more funding in the schools. We could put trades back in the schools. So we really don't need them in our business. We really don't need them in our business. If you think about it, would we write any type of legislation where someone could come and take our house that we paid for? That's idiotic. So now I don't want the state in our business. Like I say, Houston Independent School District should mean exactly that, independent school district. Now, if they was giving us 90% and we putting in 10%, that'll be something totally different. But like I know, some of our money has went towards water parks and things like that. That could have went towards a Yates football field, or Worthing football equipment and things like that. So no, I don't think the state should take care. I think our state reps need to represent our best interests and not their hidden agendas. If you look at our tax bill, said Houston Independent School District, now Houston Independent School District and Friends. I'm muted again, Monroe. There you go.
This is a tough question.
Yeah, it is.
We hear the word equity tossed around like it's a basketball. But there seems to be no equity in HISD. Now, if you can't answer it, just say, I don't want no parts of this question.
Right.
Is HISD a segregated school district? Travis?
Yes, it is. It's the have and the have-nots. Always have been like that. And that's what I don't understand. Now, 2010, they closed schools. District 2 has the high school closures, followed by 9 and 4. And now all of a sudden we're hearing this word about discrimination, Monroe. They've been closing it. They've been closing. They've been underfunding the schools. They've been removing the programs only in our neighborhoods. You know as well as I do, the reason they removed those programs because it made us independent. That's why they removed the programs. When we had those programs, those vocational programs, those jails was empty. Like me and you talk about all the time. Since they removed those programs and closed those schools and all that stuff, Guess what went up, Monroe? The crime. They don't want to acknowledge that. That's what we need our state reps looking at. We don't need them coming down here trying to run a school district when they can't even read a damn bill.
We're gonna get to that. Dr. Davis, is HISD a segregated school district?
There's a lot to unpack in that question, and I can't fully answer it, but I can give you just my perspective, right? So from a former sitting principal, when I was working at two of the most disadvantaged schools in the district, my challenge was I felt the same way. I felt as though my school wasn't getting enough funding to support what programs that we needed to be able to do for kids in order for them to be successful, that I felt other schools were getting. And so I think that question is bigger than just is HISD a segregated school district, because we know that certain populations live on certain sides of the city. You don't need to be from Texas to know that. But my challenge of it is that when you're looking at it at this level, you also have to look at it at the city level, and you have to look at it at the state level, because they play into this packaging by redrawing district. Have gerrymandering lines of how districts are rezoned for voting purposes. That's not just for school board members, that's for state legislature as well. So when you look at that bigger picture, it's not just about is the school district doing this, because there are bigger fish in this pond that are having a whole lot of say in how politics as well as funding is distributed in the state. Education, and as you and I have talked before, there's a big pie called Texas, and education gets a little bitty sliver every single year, and it seems to get smaller and smaller when you're talking about funding. But the problem of it is that when you're looking at how we fund education, it's almost criminal in some situations, because we still don't give education for kids of need enough support, and that means finances, more teachers, more resources, more access, and that still doesn't happen. So is it a segregated district? I think the proof is in the pudding.
Let's talk money. Now, we know that we're not getting what we're supposed to get from the state as far as funding.
Right.
We're not getting it. But HISD has a very, very hard time managing their money. And that includes stealing the money from the Larry Marshall era to the Rhonda Skilling Jones era, getting caught up, Brian Busby. Is HISD prioritizing and managing their money the right way, Travis?
No, I would say absolutely not. But most of the money is hidden when those bonds come about. When those bonds come about, most of the fees, consulting fees, legal fees, and things like that, but no school's getting built. Money's being spent before the tractor hit the grounds of the school. Money's being spent before the plans even made for the grounds of the school. You remember when we was at Jack Yates, they tried to show us some little blocks and said that was a school. But we exploited that. We say, no, that's not what we're here for. So no, the money's not being, but as long as there's no accountability, as long as there's no audits on a regular basis, they're going to always do this, because our people think a brand new school is improvement. They think that's advancement, but it's not a school unless you have the teachers to teach and the students to learn in it. A big pretty building has never been a school. If you go back to some of these bonds, they say that the building was going to help these kids learn. Some of these schools took over 10 years to build. It don't take 10 years to build anything. But in the meantime, the money was missing. Let's talk about Larry Marshall for a minute, because our people want to get mad when white folk do certain things, but we don't want to hold our own account. Now, Fort Bend Mechanical has never been a construction company. It was all about trades, heating and air conditioning. They gave that whole contract to a business that never even built anything, not even a damn doghouse. So everybody should find a problem with that, and he's not in jail right now. That's one of the reasons it took over 10 years for Ebony Worden to get built, right? But it's easy for them to do stuff like this, Monroe, because We always out there partying and drinking while they plotting and thinking of the next move they're going to do against us in our communities. So no, but it has to be some accountability. Stealing have to be considered stealing. Now, you take Brian Bugsby. Yes, he was a chief operating officer, but he didn't get no votes. So something had to go place on that board there. He didn't get no votes. You take when Terry Greer was here, the politician didn't get mad at Terry Greer until he started snatching those contracts back. That's when everybody had something to say. That's when he became.
They weren't mad at him when he was pulling programs out of school.
No.
They were mad when he started pulling contracts.
Contracts. Absolutely right. After all the construction he did here in the Houston Independent School District, he still got those bonuses. And the cherry on the top, he got a Terry Greer Day here in the city of Houston. So it's no coincidence that we're in this predicament right now. And let me say this. And I tell Gary, and Gary know that I'm always, if he wants somebody to do be a moderator, he always gonna call me because he know I ain't gonna hold no punches, I ain't gonna let nothing slide. But I respect him doing something. I don't give a damn how his delivery come off the people and all that stuff, because it take a lot of dedication to go through that 290 traffic and stuff all the time. Sometimes you've been in that traffic 2 and 3 hours at a time. So while people out there sitting at home with their damn remote control in their hand, looking to have their opinion about something, I'd rather him doing what he's doing versus them doing absolutely nothing. And I'm saying that publicly, brother.
Doc, same question. Same question to you. Are they mismanaging money?
Say that one more time. Is the district
mismanaging money in HISD?
See, I think there's I agree with Mr. McGee. When there are questions about whether the money is being mismanaged or not, there has to be a lot of audits, and there has to be some clarity around what the money is being used for. So when you have different funding sources that's coming into the state, whether it's local, special funding, federal funding, all of those things, there has to be a lot of accountability around what happens. And there has to be some transparency around it, because when you don't understand where the money goes, the assumption is automatically that someone's taking it or that it's being mismanaged, right? So I would venture to say that I think before that answer can be clearly explained, that it just needs to be some transparency around what's there and what's it used for, and then what is actually what's actually trickling down to the schools. Yes, there has to be some operational funds that runs the district. Absolutely. That's without question. But I'm still focusing on the lens of what is happening for the students to be able to get what they need in order to be able to matriculate through the school system, to graduate and be able to go into college or career of their choice or military and move on with their lives. Is that happening? And if that's not happening, then we need to track back the resources and find out what's keeping that from happening. It's not a matter of, in my opinion, it's not a matter necessarily of stealing, because we know that Brian Bugsby, hopefully that's an outlier situation that, will be clarified in the courts soon, right? But I'm hoping also that there's not a miscommunication around, because when you say things like stealing and, mismanagement of funding, it gets really crazy. My thing is, if there's questions about it and there's some mismanagement assumptions, they have an opportunity to prove it. Prove it that this money is not being mismanaged. Show us where this money is going. As being, representatives of the community, there's supposed to be some transparency around everything that the district does in order to be able to support the system itself of HISD. I say if there's some questions on it, they should prove it.
That's a great answer. So we're talking about money. We got $1.6 billion in ESSER funds, COVID relief money, to help close the achievement gap. Now, Doc, you gave a great answer. I think that money's been mismanaged. I know for a fact that it's been mismanaged. Now, you were there. Did you see any money make it down to the schools that were considered failing or struggling?
When there were funds that were delivered to the campuses from ESSER funds, there were, in terms of funding, are you talking about positions? Are you talking about money? Are you talking about people? What are you talking about? I mean,
I'm talking about resources.
Money.
I'm just talking about just resources. If they need teacher specialists, if they need tutoring, because like at Yates, they say they spent $191,000 last year for tutoring, but yet there was no tutoring. So just an honest question. And you know, you're in that hot seat because you were there, but I know you ain't take no money. But do you feel that that money was mismanaged because it hasn't made it to the school levels?
And see, that's the catch right there. You said it did not make it to the school level. You said that's clear and you said that's proven and clear that the money did not make it to the school level for tutorials, right? But what I saw was that there were positions that were allotted to the schools from the district level in terms of specialists, teachers. There were, all those things are money. Those things require money. So did those things happen? I can't tell you how many schools had what amount. I don't know that. But I do know that there were positions and people that were allotted to go to the campuses, especially, from the central office level. They were dispatched and positioned for the campuses.
Travis?
Cash money, I mean, not cash because we don't do that, but the allotment of funds to go into schools' budgets, I can't speak to that specifically because that's what was supposed to happen.
Travis, $1.6 billion pissed away. Was it mismanaged?
Well, let me say this. If it wasn't mismanaged and I was about to take over a district, I want it all. I want the recapture. I want the 90+% that the taxpayers put in, as well as the ESSER funds. Now, we talking politics, Monroe. Everybody got to get a piece of that pie, brother. This is the largest school district in the state of Texas. So we haven't seen past board members. We haven't even seen present board members that's fighting tooth and nail. So it's a good chance that whoever want to take over the district, and if they take it over the district, they're going to take over the resources of the district also, whether it's ESSER funds, whether it's recapture, whether it's our tax dollars. So we know the money is being mismanaged. Think about it like this: 70+% of the district is Title I, meaning those poor kids. So as soon as they got that check, they supposed to start spending that money, man, on all kind of resources. But they didn't. It's a good chance they knew. Well, they're going to come up here and say, put it like this here. We're going to say that we're going to take the district over. We're going to say that the state going to do this. We're going to have these horse and pony show town hall meetings saying we fighting for the people. At the end of the day, everybody getting paid while we not paying attention. That's the only way we could look at that, Monroe.
Okay. So let's go to the elephant in the room. His name is Millard House II. Dr. Davis, you had the opportunity to work under several superintendents, and that included, I consider, one of the best, Dr. Grenita Lathan. Millard House, what was the transition like from Lathan to Millard House? How good or bad was it, and did it affect our children from a learning capacity?
But I'll answer that because we still work together in a lot of capacities. But I have a working relationship with Dr. Lathan. She was smart, funny. She was very well astute around what education should be and what needed to be in order to help kids learn. She has a strong background in education, from her leadership to her classroom experience and so on. That was a lot of work in terms of building those systems to get the district to kind of flow in the direction she thought it should go. I had a very good working relationship with her. I understood where she was going instructionally. Even as a principal, the superintendent, she would walk my school. She would come and visit. She would talk to me about what she thinks needed to happen, what I was doing well, and what I need to work on. This came from her as a superintendent. I cannot speak to any of that with Mr. House because I wasn't a principal when he came into the district. I was at the I was an executive director at that time, and so I have no working relationship. Had no working relationship with Mr. House, and so I don't have that to compare.
I think you muted.
From Grenada to Millard House, are we going forward or are we going backwards?
Well, I'm gonna say this: any superintendent that we bring in is gonna be an overpaid scapegoat. That's why most of them are coming from out of town. Now, Grenada was, I think she was damn good, but she came under the Terry Greer regime, and that was the only black-eyed people to put on her. Now, was she moving the district forward after the Terry Greer regime or whatever? I think so. House just got here, but we got to remember, the superintendent can only do what the board members allow him to do. Most people think the superintendent is the boss. No, everybody other than the board members work for the superintendent, and the superintendent work for the board members. So he can only do what they allow him to do. The minute that he made statements about closing schools way too early. But how many board members, they say, well, we told him we want to go close any more schools and things of that such. But how many really just came public and said things like that? We done had enough of that already. Now, we have to have some stability at the Hattie Mae White building, as well as on the school campuses. Some of these schools, man, had 12 principals in 10 years and things like that. But they think the kid's supposed to excel like that. So should we have kept Dr. Lathan? Looking back right now, I would say yeah. But why most people had their eyebrow up, Monroe? Because she came in here under Terry Greer. Terry Greer was horrible. Now, if she had came in, like as a solo, some people are better as a solo artist versus the group. I think she had came in by herself. I think she'd still been here. I mean, but she did come on. She came on with it. She came with solutions, even when they was talking about the state takeover when she was here. She came with solutions. Now, did she have the full support of the board? Maybe not. The board was divided in. We always stuck in the middle of that. I wouldn't even say she had the full support of the elected officials. We were stuck in the middle of that also. We always, the taxpayers, the parents, and the kids are always stuck in the middle. When things are going good in the district, it's always Team HISD. But when it's going bad, it's the community, it's the parents, it's the kids. So we just stuck, Monroe.
What does it take to close the achievement gap? Our children are not reading on grade level. I don't see enough being done by the district itself.
Right.
And they have more than enough money to do some things. What does it take, Dr. Davis, to close the achievement gap?
It takes quite a few things, and some I'm going to miss in this statement. But number one, we have to be able to identify and know our kids. We have to know each one of them, almost by middle name, last name, background. We have to know our kids and where they came from. And then we need to be able to diagnose what they need. What do they already know? And be able to specifically talk about an individualized academic plan for these kids. That needs to happen at almost every level. And it's not impossible to do, but it does take time to do it. Part of that is also about making sure that our teachers are well prepared to handle and be able to teach to a very high level in terms of what their kids are learning. So that professional development is a key piece to make sure that our teachers are well trained, they have the professional development and then the resources to support it. So there's a lot that goes into that. You just can't say we're going to throw out a training at the beginning in August and then the teachers don't get another training until the next August, right? Our teachers need ongoing professional development to help them learn and internalize what students need and to be able to produce that and at a high level consistently across the board for kids. And then to be able to intervene and provide interventions as necessary. See, a lot of people think that teachers come in and they just teach and they lecture and then the kids in 50, 60 minutes, the kids walk out the door. These teachers are trying to knock it out of the park. They're trying to do small group instruction. They're trying to do, enrichment activities. They're trying to make sure that the kids that have struggling and academic challenges are getting all that done within a 60 to 70-minute block. It's crazy. And trying to do it on their own with 25, 30 kids in a classroom, that's a challenge. It's a major challenge. And especially in our schools that have more learning challenges than others. So what more, and you mentioned equity earlier. When you're looking at some schools may need more teachers so they can have smaller classroom sizes than other schools. Let's talk about how is that funded. So when we've always said, and we know that, and the research supports small group instruction and small classroom sizes accelerate student learning. But we haven't gotten to that place yet because the system in which we're working from the state level requirements of having 22 kids in the classroom from pre-K to 4. Then 5th grade, it could be exploding up to 30, or more. And then middle school and high school, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but our students aren't learning as much as quickly. So we really have to go back and look at where is this paradigm shift of how do we really educate kids? And are we just trying to get them to pass this test? Or are we really looking at them learning and being able to move forward in society as a productive citizen? There's a whole bunch that comes when you're talking about, are we going to be able to close the achievement gap? The achievement gap is still big and getting bigger because we're not doing those things to identify what students actually need and what systems need to be in place with the support, finances, teach small group classrooms, small group instruction, all those pieces. But then a lot of those things don't happen unless you have a system. You can't individually pick people out, but you have to have a system that supports what the intention is for the school district. And if that is not to educate kids, I'm completely lost then because that's not what the focus has been.
All right, we're going to go down here to Travis. Now, Dr. Davis says some systems that's not in place and we're not doing the right things. Well, according to what I understand at the moment, Millard House is screaming to have his contract renewed. He wants to have his contract renewed. He has 1 year left. Travis, if they're not doing the right things, should this man be having this conversation with these trustees at this time? There you go.
Okay. At this particular time, with a state takeover is popping up and everything, no one should be talking about renewing anything. Now, the achievement gap, get rid of standardized testing, stop destroying the feeder pattern. If you don't have good elementary schools, you're not going to have good middle schools. You don't have good middle schools, you're not going to have good high schools. Not only if they are destroying the feeder patterns, they have to stop messing with the zoning lines also. There's no way in hell that no part of Scott should be zoned to Lamar High School. So these are the type of things that they're doing. Now, not only that they destroy the feeder patterns, if they continue to close these schools, we're not going to have any schools, period. We're not going to have any schools, period. So if they get rid of that standardized test and allow the teachers to teach again, that could make a big difference. Right now, they're teaching the test when it should be teaching for the kids to learn. When we was in school, by the 11th grade, you pretty much had all your credits. You know whether you're going to pass or whatnot. Who can take a test and you don't know whether you're going to pass the test until after you take the test? They get to tell you whether you passing the test after you take the test. They get the grade, they get to move the goalposts or the finish line after you finish the race. That doesn't make much sense. So those are the type of things that we need our legislators. Like, you take Florida. Florida School District is much bigger than the Houston Independent School District. They have done away with standardized testing. That's what we need to do. If you want the achievement gap to improve, we need to do away with standardized testing. Years ago, I challenged the state rep to take that same test. No one has, if they fail that test, give up your pension and never run for another office in your life. No one has accepted that challenge yet. So the main thing we got to do is get rid of that standardized test. It doesn't prove anything. It just wastes a lot of money. That's the only thing. It proves that they don't mind spending money on all the wrong things.
All right. Well, Dr. Davis, you now get on the hot seat. You get on the hot seat. Hold on a second. There you go. You get on the hot seat. We know that this year that the STAR test will be on the laptops. We also know, and this is what I feel, there's no way in hell a school is going to go from an F to an A in 1 year. I don't see it happening. There's not that much growth on anybody's campus. If they go from paper to the laptop, knowing that we have more substitutes in some schools than we have certified teachers, how well do you think these kids will do on the STAR test this year?
As a former sitting principal, if I were a principal in my school right now and I had several substitutes in my school, I would be challenged to say that my kids would have learned as much as they would have if a certified teacher was not in that classroom. But I also would have had, and as many principals have done, and I know that they're doing, is that they are really pushing instructional specialists, teacher coaches, everyone else into those classrooms to be able to rotate to make sure that kids are getting their adequate education that they need to the best of their ability. It's not perfect, but I know that several of them have done that because they don't have a choice. And then when you're looking at substitutes, some of them are very good in terms of academics because some of them are former teachers. They've come back and be subs into classrooms. We get that. But when you're looking at the overall performance, can a school actually move that far, that fast without that support of a teacher? I would be very concerned. I would be, as a former sitting principal, I would be very concerned as to how my kids are going to perform, knowing I have those gaps in terms of instruction.
Same question. They're going to laptops this year with the STAR test. And from what I understand, and I meant to say this before, that the test will be proctored. And if they're proctored, I think the scores are going to go through the floor. And I think that's what TEA is actually waiting on, to see those test scores. And then they come and make their move. It makes no sense to make it right now and upset the apple cart. How you think they're going to do, Travis?
All right. First, I think it should be optional whether the kid want to take the manual, the old school test, or the laptop. But and I've said this before, if they go around saying every meeting we at, the kids are reading on the third grade level, the kids are reading on the third grade level, and then 2 months from there, they saying everybody flying with a pass with flying colors, we know something wrong with that picture. And that's not helping the kids. And like I keep saying, and I'm going to continue to say this, get rid of that damn test. It doesn't prove anything. Get rid of that test and give the kids something that's going to motivate them to even come to school. Something that's going to motivate them to get to that 6th period where they could actually graduate or leave school that day and go make them an honest living. Just do away with that damn test. I mean, think about it. Why would we be spending $100 million a year for a standardized test that don't prove a damn thing? It's on a 5-year contract. I think the last year was renewed, Monroe, was 2018. It's 2023 right now. Get rid of that damn test. 2010, man, we fired 700 teachers without even blinking an eye. And then when it was time to rehire the teachers, they went to North Carolina to hire teachers. You know, when they closed those schools and they asking the kids to do things that they can't do, because in 2010, when they closed those, the number was like 37 schools. Then they dropped down to like 16. Then it dropped down to like 4. That included Grimes and Rhodes and a couple other schools. Well, it went from $171 million to $1.6 million deficit. So just get rid of those damn tests. And all these were successful schools, and the kids were passing the test. So just get rid of that damn test, and then we'll really see our kids' potential.
Violence is at an all-time high on these HISD campuses. Every time you look up, they're finding guns on the campuses. Is the current administration doing enough to deal with the student violence, whether it's against the student or the teachers, or even teacher violence against students on these HISD campuses? Dr. Davis?
To the best of my ability, I want to try to put this in perspective, right? We have 280, HISD has 280 plus schools, right? I don't know how big the HISD PD department is. I don't know. I don't remember how large that is. But when you're looking at services and supporting that vast number of kids at those number of schools, staff and students included, that's massive, right? So I don't think that is it fair to say that they're not doing their jobs? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they need more people to help them do their jobs. And so when you're looking at a school district this size, some schools need more than others. And I think that perhaps that need to be the answer in terms of what we can do. When I was, and I'll go back to this, and I know you're probably tired of hearing this, but as the principal at Yates, I had 2 police officers. And on some days I had 3, depending on what was happening in the community and so on. When I was at Lawson, I had 1 at a middle school. Lawson, at that time, we were right around 1,200 kids, 1,200 kids, Dowling. But did we have enough officers to help support my school in that community as a former city principal? I just said no. No, I need more. I need another officer. I need at least 2 more. I have a lot of kids. I have, a challenging community. I want to make sure my kids are safe. Is that enough? No. And I can assure you that no matter how many principals you put and you talk to, they're each individually going to say they need more officers to be able to help combat some of the challenges that they have on campus. So then what do? You can't afford to have 5 or 6 officers at every high school and 2 or 3 at every middle school and at least 1 or 2 at every elementary school. You can't afford it. So does that mean it's the district's fault that they cannot provide that because they're not funded for that? I mean, it's not about placing blame. It's about how do we fix and rectify the situation so that everyone feels safe coming to school. Teachers feel safe coming to school. We have this, everybody wants to, have this open carry or whatever that, their firearms and all that kind of stuff. But is that really preventing the issue or is that causing more issues? So I don't know if the chicken is the police officers and the egg is the kids. I don't know which one needs to come first, but we're not going to fix this by blaming each other. We have to come to some solutions around what are some of the best practices that could happen in order to make sure everybody's safe. Gun violence is out of control. Gun violence in the city and the state and around this country is out of control.
Student safety, Travis, is basically the same question, but I'm going to twist it up because I know it's something near and dear to you. Violence, protecting our children on our campus. HISD has a history of hiring pedophiles. Right. And it seems like every other day you look up in the news, some teacher is going to jail for inappropriate, relations with a kid. Is HISD doing enough to protect our kids on that level, Travis?
HISD is not doing enough to protect our kids on any level. I'm going to give you a prime example. When in 2018, when we was at that board meeting, they had HPD and HISD officers there. I counted over 50 officers. Now, if you had over 50 officers at a board meeting, a public funded facility where the parents and the taxpayers are coming to tell them the truth, but you only have 2 officers at a school with over 3,000 kids, it's something wrong with that damn picture. And not only that, they don't protect the kids, hell, they don't want the kids to protect themselves. Because they policy, if someone walk up and hit you, they consider that mutual combat. And they expect too much out of these kids because if somebody walk up and hit me, I'm gonna knock the hell out of them too. But I shouldn't get in trouble for defending myself. It's been times where I had to personally go into the schools and say, hey man, something going on back here, or somebody have a gun. The officers sitting inside of the school chilling. They not out there. I'm doing their job. Some schools even have like 8 principals, but they can't tell you a damn thing that's going on around that damn school. So no, they're not doing enough. Then they have stuff like a bully awareness month. Hell, it should be 365, 24/7. So no, my answer is hell no. They're not doing enough to protect these kids. And if they're not doing enough to protect these kids, then the kids don't have any option but to try to protect them themselves. So they're not doing enough to protect these kids.
We hear all the time that HISD is top heavy. Top heavy. In the perfect world, Dr. Davis, what position on the administrative level should HISD do away with? Should it be all the 60 people that Rick Cruz hired? Should it be the school support officers? Because I didn't call school support officers sleeping in the schools. What position should they do away with?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. But what I do know is that
do we need SSOs?
I was a former SSO, so I mean, I'm like, but I was, I don't know what other people are doing in terms of their roles. I went to work every single day to do my job to the best of my ability, every single day, because I wanted to learn and help people and make sure that they got the resources and the support that they needed. What I'm saying is that I think that perhaps in this conversation, that there are just too many broad strokes about everybody, all of them, when that's not the case. A lot of officers are doing their jobs every day to the best of their ability. There may be some that are not, but those some need to be, rectified, challenged, whatever the disciplinary actions that need to happen, that needs to happen for them. Same thing for teachers, principals, blah, blah, blah. Everyone is too many to say it's everybody. I'm not a fan of that philosophy because I know it's not true. So when I'm thinking about people who are really coming to work every day, doing the best that they can to make sure that they are taking care of kids and their staff and the teachers and so on and so forth, I can't say because one teacher at this school had an inappropriate relationship with the school, so I'm going to blame all teachers. Society does that too many times to us as educators to say, oh, it's all the educators. They all need to be this, they need to have this test, or they need to have this procedure in terms of protecting, whatever. And I'm all for making sure that we are doing the right thing by kids to make sure that we put the right people in front of them to protect and take care of them. I'm all for that. Anybody else, they need to have the full book of the law need to be thrown at them. But what I'm not a proponent of is saying that it's all or nothing. I'm not like that. I'm never going to be that way because I can't say that all teachers are pedophiles because one on the East Coast had an inappropriate affair with a child or whatever situation, that all teachers on the West Coast are the same. I can't say that for principals. I can't say that for superintendents. I can't say that for anybody because all in my book, that's not a part of me. I don't believe in all.
Travis, here's a question.
All right.
Should the pastors and the politicians stay the hell out of education in HISD?
If they don't know what they're talking about, if they're not involved in it, if they don't have the best intentions of their communities and a congregation, and yes, they should. Just popping up for the cameras and stuff, that's not doing anybody no good. That's not doing anybody no good. Now,
the reason I asked you that is the bills 1882 and 1842.
Let's go.
We were going back and forth to Austin.
Right.
And these are two of the bills, that Dutton authored.
Mm-hmm.
But Dutton and Alma Allen sit on the education committee in the legislation.
Right.
How do you honestly feel knowing that Armando Wale and Garnett Coleman were the only two that didn't vote for those two particular bills?
Well, this is how I feel about it. Some of the state reps have admitted to you and I both that they didn't even read the bill, right? This is horrible legislation. And the only way that the TEA can take over a district the size of the Houston Independent School District is through horrible legislation. Now, let's go a little further than that. The guy that authored the bill, and I'm just going to say the guy because sometimes people need to do their own research because they're not going to believe you and I no way because they feel we don't have no titles, right? He authored the bill. his particular school district, which is District 2, which is in 5th Ward, has the highest school closures in HISD. So why would you write anything that's going to be detrimental to your district? It doesn't matter what your intentions are. If you put a loaded gun to your head and pull your trigger, your intention is to blow your damn brains out. So at the end of the day, this bad legislation got us in this. Now, when it comes down to you know how I feel about school closure. I know how you feel about school. We don't want them to close, but when a state rep write this type of legislation, and I agree with you, he didn't do it by himself either, because a lot of people voted for this thing. Now, when we look at these press conferences, I don't see nobody saying, "Hey, I voted for it too. Hey, I voted for it too. Hey, I didn't read the bill." But everybody getting up there, yeah, we're going to fight this thing. We're going to fight this thing. We're going to go against TEA. Hands off of HISD. No. The first thing they should get up there and say when they stand in front of somebody's church, they go to somebody's civic club, when they get in front of that microphone, is that I voted for this. I helped make this possible. That's the first thing they should say. Now, when you read through that bill, if you read those bills closely, Monroe, it's a underutilized schools. That includes our schools too, because they under-enrolled. High schools, 1,000 more kids. Middle school, 750 more kids. Elementary, 500 more kids. If you don't have that, you are under-enrolled.
So now, here's a question for both of you guys. When you say that, so a school could be labeled exemplary, but yet they don't have but 300 kids at the elementary school level. So you're telling the people that the school could still be closed based on the bill.
Come on with it. Come on with it. And exemplary mean what? Those kids are learning. Recognize mean what? Those kids are learning. So this has nothing to do with education, but it's all about compensation. They got into the real estate business a long time ago. A long time ago. Now, in 2018, they didn't have the infrastructure for the charter schools. The recapture thing was still on the fence, but they got that now. And the pandemic only gave them a chance to strengthen what they were trying to do in the first place. So they got the recapture money, they got everything else. So now they're finna move on these schools. But at the end of the day, this was horrible legislation, and our state reps need to be held accountable for it. Senate Bill 1365 is going to be the nail in the coffin because it circumvents the courts. So we need to hold them accountable for this, man.
We got some people here that may not know what circumvent the courts mean. So what does that actually mean?
Yeah, we can't take it to court. It give the Texas commissioner all the power he needs to go in and say, well, we're going to go and take this district over. Bottom line, I'm just simplifying it for you.
Dr. Davis, maybe this is your first time hearing this, but basically they had a press conference last Friday, and standing in that press conference was a bunch of state representatives, but nobody knew at the time that they had voted for this bill. Standing in that press conference was the teachers union, HFT, who spoke in the committee in 2015 and supported the bill. How you feel about that?
Trust with people who they voted for. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So when you're looking at, and I was so surprised because this is not the first time that I've heard it. Mr. McGee said it very well, that several of our representatives said that they never even read the bill, but they signed off on it. That's not, and I'll put it this way, that is not uncommon in a lot of situations because they're trying to pass legislation so quickly that for whatever reason, it's not clearly being communicated what they're signing. And it's their responsibility to read whatever they're signing so that they can support it with their constituents. And if they choose not to, that's a red flag as to who you really voted for and why. So it just begs a lot of questions, right? And I'll go one step further. When you're talking about the takeover in the legislature, I want to make sure that we are clear around what the ripple effect of that looks like for the rest of Texas. because it doesn't stop with the school district takeover. It potentially looks at a city takeover, and because the state already aligned to be voucher driven, so that would even further damage public education. So I don't want to leave that out, because that's where you see the domino effect here of how that works. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Monroe.
We got a bunch of teachers watching us.
Right.
When I ran for school board, one of the things that I wanted to battle for if I won is I believed in my heart that a first-year teacher should make no less than $75,000 a year. Sometimes you get what you pay for. We're paying these teachers crumbs, but yet we want the whole pie at the end of the year. I'm going to start with you, Travis. How much should and if you start with a first-year teacher at $75,000, a teacher of tenure would make far more money. How much should teachers be making because they're grossly underpaid? The superintendent's not underpaid.
Right.
The deputy superintendent's not underpaid.
Right.
Most of the people that work in Hattie Mae White are not underpaid, but they don't impact education every day like a teacher.
Right.
So how much should a teacher be making right now?
I'm gonna say at least 75,000 also. Now, one thing that they could do different though, they should start these teachers, the first year teachers and things like that. They should start them at the elementary level, elementary, middle school, high school, right? And the reason I'm saying this, because like we said earlier, some of these teachers are very, very young, right? And some of these kids see these same teachers at the club, at Carrington's, at D-Bar, and they developing relationships. I'm saying, I'm just keeping it real. But and it even helps with their patience and a tolerance level. If you because most of the time, if the district does not describe our feeder patterns, you might graduate and you're gonna see some of the same people. Like we was in school back in the day, you went to the same school, the elementary school, middle school, high school. That should be the same formula with the teachers. Not saying that they can't transfer to other schools or whatnot, but I think that's more productive when that kid has seen the same teacher throughout his educational experience.
But here's something I want to ask you.
Yeah.
A teacher goes to school, goes to college for 4 years, they get a degree. A lot of teachers end up with master's degrees.
Right.
Why the hell they need the certification?
Right.
If they got a master's and a bachelor's,
right,
and some teachers even have doctorates,
right,
why do they need a certification? Dr. Davis?
I'm going to put it to you this way. I am not opposed to people being certified in their craft. I'm not opposed to it.
Here's the thing. Your TEA commissioner ain't never been.
That ain't got nothing to do with me. I know it affects me, but it's not me, right? I've worked very, very hard for all of my degrees, right? And so I think that, in my own humble opinion, and this is just me, I would venture to say, when we're talking about teacher salary, I would love for our country, because we can't afford it, for our country to pay teachers like doctors. I think that would change the scope of what education should look like in terms of supporting our kids. We should pay them as doctors, because they do all of the work without cutting open, without making a single cut.
Well, you know what? When you say that, I'm gonna ride with you on it for a reason. Because before he was a doctor, he had to be taught by a teacher.
Right.
The teachers were the frontline workers during the pandemic. So if you were stuck at home, these people were on computers teaching your children. And in HISD at the time, they were making $52,000 before taxes, before TRS, before the union raped them. You see what I'm saying? And that's why I think that these teachers are grossly underpaid, and they getting what they paying for right now in the state of Texas.
Right.
You want all these results, but you want to pay them like, I mean, they can go to, if they want to realistically make $52,000 to $53,000, you could go run a Popeye's chicken and make that. But they're a teacher.
Right.
And this is how we take care of them. But yet I have a superintendent and a deputy superintendent who ain't in town 85% of the time. They're not running the school district. But yet the superintendent makes $400,000 a year before his stipends and his perks. The deputy is almost making $300,000. He's never here. But yet my teachers are there frontline every single day for 17 hours on an average, and they're making pennies. Dr. Davis?
I answered it already. I think we should pay them as doctors. They deserve a whole lot more. They deserve a lot more support. They also deserve a lot more training and guidance around the work they do, because it's difficult. I don't think anybody would tell you that teaching is easy. It's a passion. It's a heart. I mean, a lot of people say they were called to teach, all of those things, but they should be compensated adequately. And that's not consistently happened. I know in other countries, and I'll just say this briefly, but in other countries value education much more than we do. And it shows by their performance and how they want their kids and their community and their society to move forward. I don't think we're doing enough. As being a superpower on this planet, the United States, we're not doing enough overall to educate our population. We can do so much more, so much better.
From an athletic standpoint, we're touching on some things tonight. There is no equity when it comes to athletics in HISD. The poor schools get the worst of the worst. I don't know if you guys know that, I don't think it was the athletic director's fault. I think it was the pandemics. But when, football season got ready to start this year, West Side got all their helmets. Bel Air got all their helmets. Lamar got all their helmets. Yates had 80-something kids, and they sent over 30 helmets. They sent 15 to Worthing. What I'm getting at from an athletic standpoint, should HISD do more for athletics than what they're doing? Our kids are playing in old raggedy stadiums, that were built in the 50s. These stadiums were built in the 50s. You have the kids at Yates who have the opportunity to have a brand new turf field, but the community has not been able to raise $450,000. And basically they're asking the district to pick the grant up, but yet we got to beg for that. But the kids at Bel Air needed another $2.5 million for their baseball field, and they didn't have a problem giving them that. So should HISD do more for athletics instead of having, the black teams, practicing on a parking lot because they don't have lights on their fields? Travis?
Yes, it should be equal all across the board, man. I don't care what school you at. It should be equal across the board. Everybody should have a level playing field, but that hasn't happened. Now, let's be honest, though. We got to get more people involved, Monroe. Most of the meetings that we go to, man, it be the usual suspects, brother. And then they want to tell us how to say it, what to say, and when to say it. So we got to get more people involved. Now, when these bonds come up, we suggested that you have no more than 3 plans. So if Yates got $80 million and they take that $50 million building, right? They should be able to do whatever they want to do with that other $30 million. If they go buy a bus, they buy some athletic equipment, that supports some trades and things like that. That's the way that should go. But they don't do that. See, they label everything brick and mortar. Well, it shouldn't be just brick and mortar. The school, a lot of things make up the school, like the athletics, the band, the wood shop, the metal shop. We want these kids to have a full high school, middle school, elementary school experience, and they haven't had that. Only thing the district is focused on is test. Let's go. Let's talk about Delmar Stadium just a little bit. The most racist in HISD history. They didn't have to name that building out to them, but they did. What they did when they came about these Confederate names. Now, me personally, I think they should have went to Home Depot or Lowe's, buy everybody a 5-gallon bucket of paint, wiped over that, and use that money somewhere else until we could do better. But I think each campus got like $150,000, something like that. That could have bought extra uniforms and equipment for those teams also. But when it comes to our elected employees, they always use those hot button topics like racist this and racist that to get the people stirred up. But in reality, like I said, we could have got the five-gallon buckets of paint and wipe those names out and put something else on there. Matter of fact, we could have let the kids paint it on there. We have art classes still. So, but at the end of the day, we got to get more people involved. We got to get more people involved. We need the same crowd that we have at the clubs. We got to have the same crowds we have at the rodeo. We got to have the same crowds we used to have at the Freakniks. But we need that same crowd to come out and raise just a little bit of hell. Not all of it, just a little bit of it. And that's the only way we're going. Now, if you go over there to Lamar or Bel Air or something and say you're going to close that school, change them and change anything about the school, you're going to have people changing themselves to the doors and to the trees and not feeding themselves for weeks and stuff at a time. And hell, we won't even come to a meeting for just an hour. Now, I'm not going to say we. Some people won't come to a meeting for just an hour. So that plays a big part in that. That's why we're not getting that stuff. We're not demanding it. When we go to the Monroe, if you know, it's always that group that's begging for the stuff that we're supposed to have in the first place. It's time we start demanding those things, man. That's the only way we're going to get them.
Dr. Davis, you were several different times. I'm going to mute your mic for a second. You were a principal several different times. You had to deal with your budget every single year. How hard is it to create a true athletic budget for your kids in your school when you know they're performing? Let's give this right now. They're leaving tomorrow. The kids from Booker T, the first black high school in Houston. And I don't care if I'm a Yates line or not. I'm very, very proud of those kids going to play for a state championship. And I don't really hear the district saying nothing about them. How hard is it to support athletics from a financial standpoint as a principal in a school?
It's very difficult. And there are several things that you have to consider. One is that making sure that your team has all the equipment that they're supposed to have that is supposed to be allotted to your campus. Sometimes that's a challenge. You got to get all that straight first. And then there's all the other things in terms of physical exams. Sometimes you have, doctors that will donate their time to give kids physicals and things like that. It's a lot of different small pieces to get your athletic program off the ground. But then you have travel and making sure that the kids get to the games. All of those pieces need to happen. Equipment, travel, you got to feed them. You got to pay your the fees for the kids to play in certain tournaments and things like that. All of those things go through your athletic department, supposedly in the district, with the exception of all the campus stuff, right? Staffing and blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. But the problem of it is when you get your athletic program to get it off the ground, you have to have some good leadership in order to be able to understand the game as well as the politics behind the game, because there's a lot of networking that happens from the central office level to the campus level to the outside agencies of community in terms of where these kids are going to be playing and supporting, all of those kind of things, participating in athletics. It can be very difficult, especially when you don't think you have enough funding and support to put your program together.
Okay, we'll stay right here for a second.
Right.
Yates has been a staple on the football side. They've done it at the highest level. I was on the team, and God bless us all. We had great coaches. We had a great support system, great community. Right now, those kids over there have an opportunity to get a brand new turf field that's just sitting in a warehouse waiting on them. We can't raise the money. Should HISD jump in and say, you know what, we'll take over this grant, which the Texans will allow them, the NFL will allow them. Should HISD jump in and take care of those kids and give them a turf field just like they gave Bel Air a brand new baseball field? Travis?
Considering the Bel Air situation, yes, they should. But that's going back to what we talked about earlier, Monroe. somebody not reading, because the Bel Air field, everybody can't play on that field. Everybody can't go to that field. So if, in this particular case, if they done it for Bel Air, they should do it for Jack Yates also. It got, like I said, it got to be a level playing field all the way across the board. Now, sometimes when you short on funds, you say you're short on funds, and I'm talking about the district now. Feed at the state of the school's address. Feed them the same thing that the kids got to eat in these cafeterias, right? That'll save a whole lot. I remember one year we went and they put us out. Me, you, Tahir, Larry, McKenzie, you know, because we were just asking questions about the food. You know, why y'all eating so good and these kids eating like this? So you can save money. It's different ways you can save money. But feed, one thing, like have it in the have it over at the Hattie Mae White building. You ain't got to go downtown in no 5-star hotel for that. You know, you can do it virtual if you want to. Save that money and put it to some other type of use. You know, if you got to go towards athletics, if you got to go towards scholarships, if you have to go towards teachers pay at that time, then do that. But the school and the students should always come first. HISD has always been paid per student. That's how they get the money from the state, per student.
Dr. Davis, like for a second. You being the former principal of Yates, knowing the challenge that we had, knowing that your guys on the football field, the coaches and the kids, would go out there and lay it on the line. HISD makes tons of money off Yates football. Should the district take over the grant and give those kids that field? Hold on. Unmute your mic. It won't let me unmute it. There we go.
I got it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would need to know more information about why it didn't happen in the first place, because that was my understanding that it was supposed to have happened. Am I right? That was part of the package in terms of the athletic department. It was supposed to happen.
Well, what it was is you had some independent alumni that were able to get the grant, $450,000, and they secured the turf. Well, what they forgot to tell us that the money was actually a matching grant. And that means we had to raise $450,000. Now, you being the former principal, know we have a problem raising $20,000 a year just for scholarships. So basically what we've asked HISD to do is take over the grant. The conversations have been had with the Texans, who don't have a problem with it. The NFL does not have a problem with it. But yet 6 months later, we can't get a solidified answer. So do you think that they should take over this grant and give those kids that field?
So I got a couple questions. The alumni applied for this grant and got the grant and didn't communicate that it was a matching grant with the district. So It actually falls on the alumni that they're supposed to have raised this $450,000. And now they want to shift it to the district to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have issues with that. So whether the district would be, should the district have to pay for that $450,000 because the alumni of Jack Yates didn't do what they were supposed to do? Is that the question?
No. The question is we are now, Gary Monroe didn't find this out until 3 months ago. But that means they had been sitting on the information for 15 months. So at this point, we respectfully asked the district, because one, they didn't build the new football field right. It floods in the end zone. The sprinkler system has never worked. So the ground is as hard as concrete. You know, it's basically unsafe some days for those kids to be out there. So we need a new field regardless. I think it would be cheaper to get the turf, which could last for 10 years easily, and just respectfully ask them, could you just pick up the tab? Because it's the same thing Bel Air did when they ended up over budgeted. And right now their scoreboard, they have a fabulous scoreboard over there that was on the baseball field that can't be moved because it's too big. So they need a new scoreboard. So they need another $1 million. That means they would have given them, if they give them the $1 million, an additional $3.5 million. When all the Yates kids are asking them to do is pick up $450,000.
So if that is being the case, I think that that's definitely something that the board should consider. Because if it's in the fair interest of equity to give kids the opportunity to have some level playing field, that should be considered. But what I would have issue with, I would still have very strong issues with an agreement that came from outside of HISD, meaning the alumni. And I'm just speaking facts from the alumni that agreed to $450,000 without the district even saying, if you apply for this, we will support it if we need to. They had no, I'm just speaking from what you just shared with me. The district having no knowledge of an application that the alumni applied for and received, and then only to find out that they're going to renege on the $450,000 in terms of matching it. I would have very strong issues with that, because it's almost like, even though it may not have been intentional, they didn't read it. It's like you got to know what you're getting into.
There's a lot of that going on.
So you can't hold the district responsible for an outside entity's lack of understanding of a grant when they applied for it, and then you want to shove it to the district and say, okay, now y'all got to pay for it. We did this and we got it, but now you got to pay for it. That's not how it works.
I think that what should have been fair is when the bond was done, which they promised all of us this, that each one of those schools high schools should have had a turf field with lights on it, because how fair is it to kids who have to prepare for a playoff game after daylight savings time, and they have to practice on a parking lot? You see what I'm saying? There are things that we could look at to say, okay, they did it wrong, but at the same time, we can fix this because it's not right in the first place.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
I get it. I get it.
That's where I'm at on it.
But you're still talking about an equitable situation that should have been already planned from the onset for all schools with their athletic departments. So all schools should have gotten something relatively the same in terms of what for the athletic program. I'm with you, absolutely. But what this last situation, it throws it off a little bit.
Last question. They talking about a $5 billion bond. $5 billion. Now, they could do a bond for 3.5 with no tax implications. But should we be talking about a bond with a takeover and possible school closures? And the reason for the bond, they say, is to build new schools. Should we even be talking about this, Travis McGee?
We shouldn't be talking about a bond at all. For what? Matter of fact, they still have bond money left from 2012. That could help fix that football field. No, we should not be talking about any bond at this particular point. The last four bonds totaled $4.3 billion. Some of those schools closed. Some of those schools never got built. We should not be talking about a bond. Matter of fact, the only time that we really see our elected employees together is when they're talking about a bond. They'll come out here then and say, oh, we need to support this thing. We need to support this thing. But they don't come out when they're closing those schools and they fire those teachers. So no, we should not be talking about a bond. And this one's going to be like $5 billion. Like I said, if you look at any of that paperwork, you're going to see a lot of legal fees, a lot of consulting fees before any building get touched. So no, we should not be talking about any bonds. A new building has never taught anyone anything, you know. So if I could trade programs and things like that for some of this bond money, that's what I would be focused on. And I think the community should be able to decide what they need versus what the district wants them to have. Like, we need these trades back in these schools. That's what we need back in these schools, man. We don't need any more of these fancy titles on education, because all that equal is money. We don't need them to come and tell us one day that kids reading on a third grade level, and then the next day they turn the whole school to an early college high school. That doesn't make much sense to me. So we need to focus on common sense type stuff. We need to go back to how it used to be. Get rid of that testing. I promise you, if you get rid of that standardized testing, you'll see a whole lot of money. You'll see a whole lot of teachers and job stability here. Man, that test alone have these teachers pulling their hair out. Because their job relied depends on that test also. So in short, no, we should not be discussing any more bonds here in the city of Houston, period. It's not one bond that has ever truly benefited us. Not one.
Dr. Davis, should we be talking about a bond with possible school closures on the table?
I would love to be able to say yes, because so many of our elementary schools specifically are in bad shape, and some of our communities do need a new school, but not at this point with this conversation around being the potential takeover that some are saying is imminent. I just don't think it's the right time. That can be picked up at another time in terms of when and how much and what the need is, but I just don't think now is the time.
I'm gonna make this one the last question, and y'all get to close it out on this one.
Okay.
With a possible takeover coming, with the district not performing well academically, if you could tell the superintendent one thing, because I know his people watch, and he watches too, Travis, what would you tell him right now?
Well, at this point, it ain't too much he can do at this point. But if I could tell him something, I would tell him to advocate getting those trades back in our schools. Talk to these state reps and things like that. Advocate getting these trades back in these schools. Also, I mean, I know he don't have no control of it, but everybody got to say, I'm gonna keep saying, I'm gonna keep beating the drum. Get rid of those standardized tests. Get rid of the standardized testing. Allow your teachers to teach, and then you'll see the academics and everything turn around. But as long as there's tests here, we're not going to never be successful with that if they're not being allowed to do their jobs.
Dr. Davis, what's the one thing you could tell him?
I would say, Mr. House, talk to your people. And I'm not talking about the people on cabinet or the board members. I'm talking about the principals and the teachers. They need to hear from him directly as to what questions that they may have. What is this potential takeover? What does it mean? Because there's a lot of confusion that's going around right now about what this whole thing means and in terms of what the impact will be. I think that there's missing information that perhaps Mr. House or his team has that can really settle the nerves of a lot of people. Yes, this is going to be major if it happens. It's going to be this is going to be potentially catastrophic, but it doesn't have to be crazy in terms of a lot of out of control responses and fighting or whatever. The media is going to have a field day with this. But I would say Mr. House would please reach out to the teachers and the principals in the district, have some sort of meetings, community meetings, so that they understand what is really happening and why it's happening, so that they can be oftentimes what I did was as a principal was I trained my staff exactly and talked to them quite often around what was really happening in the district, what was really happening in the school, so that they could go out and communicate the same messaging and it be true and factual around what was really happening. I think when you leave it up to chance, people make up their own stories and they create all this other panic and chaos that's unnecessary. So my advice or my suggestion would be, clarify any issues that are happening. Be transparent about what this really means and why it's happening, so that the people who are really going to be impacted by this have the real story, so that they can also be advocates around what needs to happen in order to keep this district moving forward.
Well, I'm going to close it out and say this is what I would tell him. Everything rises and falls on leadership. When your leadership is suspect, nothing's going to work right. I would tell him that you're surrounded by the wrong people. You're surrounded by the wrong people that are only in it for self-gain. You're listening to politicians who are only in it for self-gain.
Right.
This is your career. This is your livelihood. One wrong mistake, and you're going to be a consultant, but you'll never be a superintendent again. So you may need to look at your circle and keep your circle tight and just make good, rationalized decisions and start working in the best interest of these kids. That's what I would tell him. I want to thank my guest tonight, Dr. Kenneth Davis, former area superintendent of the Houston Independent School District, my good friend Travis McGee, one of the top activists in the state of Texas, a Worthing graduate. I'm the 5-star general. It's the war zone. I'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right.